I'd like to introduce my good friend, Dr. Roger Guillemin. Roger is a Frenchman and grew up in Dijon, and he's here today to talk to us about growing up in the wine country and about wine in the wine country. So, Roger, I know your family had lived in the Dijon area for many years. Tell me a little bit about how it was to grow up in Dijon.
Well, in many ways it was easy, simple. My parents were not rich people, but they were comfortable. And I went to the lycée, to the elementary schools, then the lycée. And you know, to this day, I'm still amazed at the kind of education that was. As we will come to a little later, you know, it was 6 years of Latin, 5 years of Greek, and 5 years of a foreign language. And my mother decided I should learn German. So I did, because I was older to learn German. And as we will say later, it turned out to save my neck on a couple of occasions later on. So life in Dijon was actually very pleasant. And I remember going with my parents when I was a little kid, going to the theater and seeing Faust and a couple of other operas like this. And my father, strangely enough, even though he had a moderate secondary education, was a good musician. He used to play the violin.
Oh, really?
And he wrote songs, all having to do, most of them having to do with wine and drinking wine. And he was, from it, when I was a child, I remember hearing about the Cadet Bourgogne and the Chevalier du Tadevin came later. And in Dijon, there was, still is to this day, every year, something called La Foire Gastronomique. It was 2 weeks in this big, they were building actually some sort of big shack on the Les Allées du Parc, and there were shows of stands for all sorts of, including all the main vineyards, of course. And I would go with my father and would taste the wines. And no, I actually, I was given wine when I was probably 6 years old, usually with water.
Right.
And you know, when we had children later on, I also insisted that the children, girls or boys, should start drinking wine and do it right. And to this day, and as I said, one of our daughters became one of the principals of Farniente Vineyard.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about the wine business. In our relationship through the Chevalier de Tadevin, we've always appreciated your counsel and your advice about the wines that we have chosen, and you are a tough taskmaster for that. But that must be due to the fact that you were exposed so early, and of course, Burgundy is probably your wine of choice.
No doubt. I never buy Cabernet Sauvignon.
I love that.
I always buy a Pinot Noir. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with the California Pinot Noirs, so long as you choose the right ones.
You have a favorite of the Californians right now?
Well, at the moment, I've been, all of those. The name escapes me from that part of the
From the Russian River area?
Yes, of course, absolutely. No, at the moment I've been buying a few cases of a Pinot Noir from the upper, near the Monterey Peninsula, called Hahn, the Hahn Vineyard.
Oh yeah, we're familiar with Hahn. That's
well, I'm sure
nice,
you are. Yeah, sure. Wonderful.
Well, it's just, you know, you don't have to drink a DRC to enjoy Burgundy. Would you comment a little bit about why the Guillemin in Burgundy, they're growing the same grape, but they're growing in different Guillemin, different soil, and they're all different. So maybe your comments about terroir would be appreciated.
Well, there's no question. I'm glad you raised the issue, so to speak. There is no question that the terroir, the location, which implies not only the humidity of the air, but the water for the roots and the illumination, the sun and so on, is of major significance. The best example I know of, and you may be surprised, it's not going to be Burgundy, is Gewürztraminer from Alsace.
Oh, really?
The Gewürztraminer grapes are planted on both sides of the Rhine River,
right.
the German side and the French side.
Right.
And there is just no comparison with the taste of a French Gewürz
versus the German.
The other side. But in Burgundy, the terroir is of major significance. And within a couple of 100 yards, you know, and that's how you have the various, all around the Clos de Vougeot,
right.
You have these various...
right, I mean there's, 80 owners that own 120 acres of Clos Vougeot, and there's a lot of variation between every little individual family's plot, so, basically.
Yes, yeah. That's right, sure. Yeah. No, as I grew up and as I became on my own, so to speak, I really developed a taste for the Pinot Noir, which...
marvelous grape.
Absolutely.
What is your earliest recollection of the Hospice de Beaune? Do you remember the first time you went to the Hospice?
Yes, absolutely. I remember seeing the Hospice de Beaune when I was about 12 years old, and it was probably with my school. We were taken there to see not only this extraordinary structure with the roofs, but also to see some of the paintings, which are the collection of the Hospice. And
it was operating as a regular hospital.
Oh, absolutely.
Complete with the red curtains and the...
Oh, sure, I do remember seeing, going... This was unbelievable. You know, there were 2 people per bed. Yeah. Because, no, it was really the ancient place, you know, and it was all run by these nuns.
Right. And
the municipality was also involved. And... the Latour family was actually, Henri Latour had been the major of the city, and had, of course, the wonderful wines from, what was the name? They lived in a little castle, Chateau de Alox-Corton. Alox-Corton, you know, one of the great Pinots, of course. And he showed me, I remember going with Henri Latour, and he showed me where his grandfather had planted for the first time white wines in this area, which had always been exclusively red wines. Yeah. And you know what it became, known as Corton Charlemagne.
Up on the hill.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was really something.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I don't remember, I think it came after the Nobel Prize. I think it would have been 78 or 79. My wife and I presided over La Vente des Vins des Hospices de Beaune.
Oh, really?
And it was quite a show.
Quite a deal.
Absolutely, sure. Yeah, and that's when I became formally intronized with the Chevalier du Talvin at Clos Vougeot. Yeah.
That whole history of the Clos and how those Cistercians put it all together and then made it all happen for centuries, and the fact that it seemed to me in my readings about this that everybody talked to each other. I mean, nobody had any real secrets except maybe what they did about cultivating their vines and how they, of course this is way before there was anything anti-insect that you could do with sulfates and everything. No. So they were cultivating a whole different way, but still they all shared and they tried to make a consistent product, which has made Burgundy what it really is.
And you know, when you visit the Clos Vougeot and when you see the wine presses, this is astounding. You know, how many people were involved in turning those things to crush the grapes.
They used those presses right before the 1000th Chapitre, the harvest of that year. They actually took some grapes into the Clos and pressed them in those, presses.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
I don't know what happened to the juice, but anyway, they made it there.